A year on, we still are profoundly in the dark about what Brexit is going to look like when we get to the end of this process. So the first thing we don't know is how long we're going to have this Prime Minister for. I think she will last for far longer than most people seem to assume, simply because the Conservatives are so weak they can't afford to look any weaker by getting rid of her. The most striking thing about the year since the referendum for me was the way Theresa May, by herself or with her two mates, defined what Brexit meant and didn't listen to any opposition. If we get a new Prime Minister, they might have different ideas. And of course, if we have a change of leadership in the Conservative Party, you will see the mother of all fights over Europe break out. The second variable is how MPs behave. There's been a lot of stuff said over the last few weeks about, oh, there's an overwhelming majority for a soft Brexit in Parliament. But do you remember last June when everyone was saying, yeah, we voted to leave, but there's an overwhelming majority in favour of remain in Parliament, so Parliament will find a way around this. And then what happened? Parliament voted overwhelmingly, with its massive majority in favour of remain, for triggering Article 50. The third variable is the economy. So before the referendum, the Treasury published a short-term report saying if we leave the European Union, in the year following that decision, we will lose 500,000 jobs and there will be a recession. Wrong and wrong. And so now, whenever people warn of economic trouble ahead, what the Brexit side say is, yeah, but they're wrong. Okay? Now, if the economy starts to show signs of deterioration that hits people, if inflation goes up further, if you get decreases in investment, if you get job losses, and this is the fundamental thing, someone comes up with a compelling narrative that links that to Brexit and not to something else, you might see the debate about Brexit shifting. YouGov do a tracking poll on attitudes towards Brexit. Do you think leaving the European Union was a good idea or a bad idea? 52% generally think it's a good idea. 48% generally think it's a bad idea. You remember those numbers? They're very, very similar to another set of numbers, okay? If you see public opinion shift dramatically, then that in turn will affect the way that MPs behave inside the Palace of Westminster. As things become clearer, the clock will be running down. And as the clock runs down, we need to get some sort of deal, because if we fall out with no sort of agreement, particularly on the Article 50 stuff, the short-term impact will be very severe.
We need to wait to see what will happen with the vote on the Queen's speech next week. Because if that Queen's speech is voted down, the last time that happened was 1924, it will be very difficult for this government to get those 24 measures and 8 bills on Brexit through Parliament. If they do not have a deal with the DUP, that will also have impact with them getting legislation through Parliament. The House of Lords are going to be very strong in their scrutiny. They have already expressed so. And then you have the other parties behind the scenes that we know have met, Labour, Liberals, SNP, who are going to put an amendment to the Queen's speech, which will be around access to the single market. So there's an awful lot that can happen in the space of a week. That's even before we start negotiating. And what's happening in the meantime? In the meantime, the 27 member states, their presidents and leaders, are meeting this evening. And after dinner, the UK will not be at the table. And their discussions will be about the Brexit negotiation stance. I absolutely agree that Brexit is Brexit, because we lost the vote, and that's what we have as a democratic country. I don't believe in any of these adjectives that are added, red, white, blue, high, low, soft, hard. It will be the deal we get. And we have to push for the best possible deal. But that will be the deal we're offered.
Can I ask the obvious question then? No, put your hand up if you voted for Brexit. So we've got about, I think, 4 people in an audience of over 100. So no, the 5 of us are in quite a minority. And this is obviously where the Liberal Metropolitan elite come on a Thursday lunchtime.
Thank you.
The referendum, as we know, was a year ago tomorrow. And referendums in this country are not used that regularly, but I think they're an important device to settle constitutional questions often, or indeed questions which divide political parties, where, and we saw that in 1975 with the original referendum on entering the common market, and so it was that we saw it again with the referendum last year, where, lest we forget, 17.4 million people voted to leave the European Union, which was more people than have ever voted for anyone or anything in British electoral history, and indeed more than voted for any party at last week's or a couple of weeks ago's general election. And as far as I'm concerned, that referendum was very much a mandate from the British people seeking to take back control of our laws, of our money, of our borders, and our trade policy. And to do those things, that requires being outside the single market and being outside the customs union and outside the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. And don't take my word for that, because during the referendum campaign, David Cameron, George Osborne, Nick Clegg and others all explicitly said, if you vote for this, we'll be outside the single market, we'll be outside the customs union, and indeed that is what has to happen in order for Brexit to be meaningful. I'm very confident about it. I think the British public voted for us to stand tall in the world on our own 2 feet, while remaining very outward-looking, globalist, internationalist in our outlook. And I think there are good days ahead, albeit in the months in negotiation. There's clearly uncertainty, but the sooner that we can secure that deal and be free, the better.